Okay, so again, I want to welcome everybody to the webinar today. This will probably be fairly short, the things we're going to cover. I think there's a lot of information there that people may or may not be aware of that the control can do, but there's not a whole lot involved in each one of these. So we're going to be covering tool life monitoring, printing data from the control, such as tool setup information, program blocks, things like that. And we are going to talk about how you can enable or disable currently installed machine options on the control. So the first thing I want to do is we're going to go through the tool life monitoring. If I go to the tool setup for any particular tool that I have in my library, we look down here in kind of in the bottom right section, there are two fields. Now you may or may not have both fields appearing right now. That if you only have one, that's because of a setting we're going to talk about in the next screens here. But basically what I can do, when I put a tool in the spindle during a program, on the left little box here, it's going to continue to count in minutes how many minutes that tool has been in the spindle and operating. Once I enable this feature, the tool life monitoring, I can actually set a maximum value here in minutes that I want to determine that this tool has been worn. So if I determine that after 250 minutes of cutting time, this particular tool I believe is worn, then I want the control to follow that and then trigger a couple of responses that we'll talk about. So again, if you look in your tool setup and you only see one box, it's only because on the next screen I'm going to show you, you haven't turned on the tool life monitoring just yet. Once you do, you'll have both boxes here. Again, left side keeps track of the minutes it's in there. The right side is where you put the information that you want to enter. All right, so I'm going to go to the auxiliary, utilities, user preferences, and part and tool settings. When we get there, we have three tabs: the general tab, the matching tab. Those have both been covered in other webinars in the past, but we're going to go to the life monitoring tab. Now, the default setting, I believe, is to no here. And if it is set at the default setting of no, that's when you would only see one of the two fields I showed you on the tool setup screen. Once I set this to yes, and I want to enable the tool life monitoring, then it opens up that second field as well as gives me the ability to make some changes on these next few little settings here. So a couple of things that we want to happen when we've reached that maximum time that we've set for this tool. Do you want to display a warning message? Probably do. I want something to tell me or the operator that this tool has reached the maximum life that we've determined for it. And then do we want to mark that tool defective or just simply warn us? If we mark it defective, it will continue to cut the part that is in that the tool is cutting right now. Once it is done and puts that tool away, the tool becomes defective, and any other time in the program that you call that tool, it will halt the program because that tool is no longer able to be used. I'll talk about here in a minute a possible thing that could happen that you could set up if you have probing, but not everybody has tool probing on their machine. So these are the options we have without probing. I want it to warn me, and then I want it to become a defective tool where it would error or halt the program if I tried to use that tool again in auto operation. A couple other settings. This one has to do with when we want to reset the cutting time back to 0. We have a couple of options. We can do nothing, meaning that you just have to always keep track of and go zero those out when you make a tool change or swap tools or something like that. I can make it automatically to do that, prompt me, or don't do anything at all. I like setting these to prompt. So what it means by type is if I have tool number 1 defined as a face mill and I switch that tool out for a end mill, I'm changing the type of cutter. That probably means it's going to be a new tool, and I would want it to change it back to 0 in that case. And here I want it to prompt me where I would have to click yes, I want it to zero that out. That way, if I, for whatever reason, don't want it done, I don't have to. And the next two have with changing the diameter or the length. Changing diameter, I probably want that to prompt me. You can set a tolerance here if you like. But basically what this means, if I don't change the type, if I'm using a 1/2" end mill and I'm switching over to a job where I need to use a 3/8 end mill, I've changed the diameter. I want it to prompt me, do you want me to zero this? Just again, reminding me to zero this out, the time out if I'm using this feature. And the last one here would be for length. Also, I can set a length or a tolerance for that. But if I'm touching off a tool, chances are it's because I have broken the tool, it's a new tool for whatever reason, and I probably want it to prompt me here as well. What I will say about the diameter is if I were to put an 1/8" in there, for example, then only if I make changes going from, we'll say from a 1/2" to 3/8, that's an 1/8" difference, would it prompt me to do that. I like to leave this at 0 so it would prompt me anytime that I make a diameter change. That way I'm always thinking about it if it's something that I need to change. Now, I talked about this up here, marking the tool as defective. If you happen to have a tool probe on your machine, let's go to a tool here. For tool probing, whether you're set to a probing style or not, whether it's length and diameter, or no probing whatsoever, we have a field down here for sister tool. If I enter a tool number in here, let's say tool 10, for example, then when I'm using tool 1 and it reaches that maximum allowable cutting time that I have determined for the tool, then instead of using 1 because it's defective, it will now pick up the sister tool. And for each tool, we have this same setting here. So for tool 1, I could have sister tool 10. For tool 10, I could have sister tool 100 or whatever. So I could continue this on if I need to. One of the other benefits to having the probing, however, is I can also, if I set it up to probe for length and diameter, for example, somewhere else in the control, which we've talked about in one of the other webinars, but I can set a tolerance for length and diameter, which would also trigger that sister tool because the tool has become defective. But again, this last part with sister tools is only if you have a probe, but we do find customers that are using this cutting time to determine some tool life monitoring, and it has been effective, so it's something that I wanted to talk about. Again, not a whole lot of settings there, but something definitely to be aware of. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is printing data. So if I go to auxiliary, utility, and printing, I have some options here. Part printing data, tool information, and probing are ones that I have used the most. Serial numbers, we'll talk about that one as well, but that keeps track of a list of serial numbers that you've used in the serialization data block that we have. So the first one is part program printing. So if I open that up, here I have a program that's active that has 21 blocks in it, and I can choose which things I want to have printed out into either a PDF file or a printed paper version. Like if I wanted to keep something in as setup sheets or a setup data for a job that I run often. I can turn on and off the things that I don't want, things that I do want, and so forth. Once I hit printing, it's going to open up sort of a print review, if you will. Here are because I have program parameters checked, here's the general 1, general 2 tabs, the milling tabs. These are all the settings that were in the program parameters for this program when it was printed. Part setup information, and then the data blocks. Here's a mill contour, the roughing and finishing speeds and feeds and tools, and then segments. Segment 0, segment 1, segment 2, and so forth. So this, again, can become kind of handy if you are trying to set up a setup sheet or something for an operator for later on. And at the bottom here is the tooling information. So each tool, what it was called, so forth, tool numbers. Then here I can either click on the print screen, which means I have to have a printer hooked up to the control, or I can do a save as, and then I can save that out to a thumb drive. One thing I'd like to point out, whenever you're saving from, at least on the desktop version, I believe it's the same way on the machine as well. If you're saving, it always wants you to select an external drive. We don't save directly onto the hard drive. You would always want to save to a thumb drive or something. So you'll notice that it won't allow me to select my C drive here, for example. But I could come down here and change the name if I wanted. So the next one that we'll talk about is tooling information. This is basically just going to give you a paper copy of all of the tools that are in the library and all the information that goes along with those. So tool number 1, tool number 2, and so forth. What are their settings? Things like that. So this would be helpful if you just wanted a backup for whatever reason, or you wanted to keep a tool list at your workstation to be able to flip through to see, I want to use tool 10 for a program I'm writing coming up or something like that. So that is our tooling data. Probing data automatically saves to a file in the same folder with the same name as your program that you're using when you do the inspection cycles. So in conversational programming, hang on, got him. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so in conversational programming, I can select some inspection data blocks. Those inspection blocks will create a text file. Again, same name of the program and the same file as the program. And I am able to then go by using this button here for printing probe data. Go find that file. It's a text file. Then I can open. It will then open. I don't have any saved, or I'd open one up. It'll open up just like the other ones we've seen, and I can print or save then from the control out. So I'd have the inspection data that I need. The next one is serial numbering. So I've got a quick little program written here that just does some serial lettering. I'm increasing by 1 every time I run it, starting with the letter B or whatever. When I draw that, we've got B 0003. So every time I run this, it's going to increment by 1. What this allows me to do is go to printing, serial number printing, and it keeps a list of all of the serial numbers that have been printed, whether those were used or were uploaded as a text file, which we can do, or they were user defined in that block. It will keep a list of the serial numbers that have been used. Some customers might use this for just for their records to show what the serial numbers were that they ran in a certain lot or a certain day or whatever. But again, I can print it from here or save it out to a thumb drive or something. This last one is 3D printing. That is an option that we used to offer. You could get a 3D printing head to put on the machine, turn any vertical milling machine that Hurco made into a 3D printer. And this option here was using with graphics, it would print whatever was on the screen. We don't offer that any longer, but I still have it enabled on my control or on my desktop here, so that's why that button shows up there. You more than likely, either this will be grayed out or you won't have it at all. More than likely, it won't even show up. So that's the printing data. Those are the different things that we can do to print things out. The part printing information is the most common that we see and probably the most useful, again, for setup sheets for people doing things later on. And the last one I want to cover, also very quick, but it can be useful. We have a lot of customers who they may buy the library, the tool material library with the machine. They have other Hurcos, or in the future they buy more Hurcos. They are finding it difficult to manage the way that we match tools between two different machines, or maybe they have the older Ultimax software and they just want to be able to open the program and all the tools be saved with the program. For whatever reason, they might want to turn off the tool material library. So the way you do that, or for any option, is we're going to go to the utility button. We're going to hit the auxiliary button on the control, hit the utility screen, go to system configuration, and the top button here says software options. This is going to show you all of the options that are currently installed on the machine or in that control. And as I highlight them, I'm not going to do my tool material library because it zeroes out everything. But let's say I wanted to do tool change optimization. Once I highlight that, over here in the soft keys, I'll have a disable selected option. If I do that, then it just disables it. You see that it's now still there, but it's disabled. And if I ever need to or want to, I can go back and enable that, and it's back on. So as long as these options have been installed in the control, you can toggle them back and forth just that easily. There are probably other reasons. I just can't think of any good examples right now why you might want to do that. But the tool material library seems to be the most common that people want to do. So I thought at least it was worth talking about. Once I do the disable selected option, it's going to error out and tell or warn me that it's getting ready to do some changes, and so I don't want to do that. But just letting you know, that's all you'd have to do is click disable the option, hit yes, you're accepting whatever it is, the little warning pops up, and then that will be disabled. Again, all you have to do to re-enable it is highlight it and hit the enable selected options button. So that was a pretty quick rundown of three very not real well-known options or features that we have, but something I wanted to touch on in one of these little quick training sessions. So if there's any questions, if you want to go ahead and jump in that little chat window there and type something in, I'll give a few minutes for that. We didn't have any type during the session, but if anything comes up. In the meantime, while we're waiting on that, if there are any questions regarding these features or anything else that you might have seen in one of the webinars, or anything that questions you might have, you feel free to email us at applications.hurco.com. I'm sorry, applications@hurco.com. We've got somebody that watches that email all the time, and somebody will get back with you with answer to whatever question it is that you may have. Well, I'm not seeing any messages come in here, so I guess there's no questions. Just want to thank everybody for taking a few minutes here to sit through this today. You will get a link to watch the recording of this again if you were on today, and as well, go to hurco.com. Under the support tab, there are all the webinars that we've done. This is number 13 in the series of different things, and we've covered quite a bit. So if you want, you can go check out those and learn about some of the other things that you might not be aware of that Hurco can do. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording